3 men attacked the Mafia boss, the waitress said. You picked the wrong night. The rain in New Orleans was not a cleansing event. It was a fine, suffocating mist that settled over the French Quarter, making the cobblestones slick and the air thick. Inside the Sabine house, the humidity was held back by overworked air conditioning, which smelled faintly of ozone and old filters. A lazy tenor sax spilled from hidden speakers, weaving through the clink of heavy silverware and the rich, rolling scent of garlic and browned butter. It was Tuesday, just past 9 p.m., and the dinner rush was dying. The brass bell above the heavy oak door jangled, a sound too sharp for the mellow room. 3 men entered. They wore cheap plastic rain slickers that dripped onto the polished wood floor. They did not check the specials board. They did not wait to be seated. Maeve Rook, polishing a wine glass behind the service bar, tracked their movement. Her eyes, which had seen the dry dust of Kandahar field hospitals, were accustomed to reading intent. The first man kept his right hand stiff, the nylon of his sleeve pulling tight over a shape that was too hard and too angular to be a wallet. The second man scanned the room, ignoring the patrons and settling on the corner booth. Maeve set the glass down. She moved toward the kitchen pass, her orthopedic shoes silent. As she passed the bread station, she whispered to herself, perhaps to them, perhaps to the humid air. Wrong night. The first man's hand dipped inside his slicker. Maeve did not hesitate. She grabbed the heavy pewter tray, piled high with sourdough baguettes. It was not a weapon of precision, but of interruption. She swung it like a discus, aiming for the shoulder. The tray connected with a solid, meaty thud, spinning the man sideways. In the corner booth, Silas Caravelli looked up. He had been admiring the amber light refracting through his Sazerac. He was a man defined by the Mississippi River deep, powerful and muddy with history. He was trying earnestly to get clean, to retire from the throne of the lower river. Half the golden liquid was still in his glass when the bread tray flew. The first man, staggering from the blow, completed his draw. He fired. The shot was wild, missing Maeve entirely, shattering a row of antique whiskey bottles and punching a hole in the ceiling sprinkler head. Chaos erupted. Patrons screamed. The tenor sax was swallowed by shouts. A fraction of a second later, the fire suppression system kicked in. A pressurized spray of cold water erupted from the ceiling, instantly dousing the room. The floor, already slick with spilled drinks, became a sheet of treacherous ice. The second attacker lunged for Maeve. She grabbed a fresh tablecloth from a nearby table, the heavy white linen snapping taut in her hands. As he slipped on the wet tile, she brought the cloth down and around his neck, twisting and pulling him off balance. He crashed into a dessert cart. The third man went for Silas, but Silas was no longer the relaxed retiree. He moved with a brutal, compact economy. He kicked the heavy oak table sideways into the man's shins, and as the man buckled, Silas grabbed a nearby dining chair. He did not swing it, he used it as a tool, jamming the legs under the man's chin, pinning him against the velvet wallpaper, his airway compromised. Behind the bar, now! Maeve yelled over the deluge. The water was icy. She grabbed Silas's sleeve, the expensive, tailored silk, and hauled him toward her service station. They slid behind the mahogany bar, crouching between the ice well and the sinks. The air was suddenly quiet, filled only by the hiss of the sprinklers and the muffled groans of the downed men. They looked at each other, breathing hard. It was a pause that lasted only one heartbeat but contained entire lives. Maeve's eyes were those of a combat nurse, analytical, assessing damage, familiar with the smell of blood. Silas's eyes were the color of the river at dusk, accustomed to enforcing unwritten laws and calculating human leverage. They recognized the competence in each other instantly. Sirens wailed in the distance. Predictably late, the sprinklers sputtered and died. Through the front door came not the NOPD, but 4 men in the gray uniforms of the Gulf State Constabulary, the semi-private agency that kept the port's peace. They took in the scene, the water, the broken glass, the 3 subdued intruders. Silas stood up. Brushing water from his jacket, he nodded to the lead officer, who looked relieved to see him standing. "Concierge cleanup," Silas said, his voice flat. "Send the bill for the drywall to my office." Maeve grabbed her backpack from a dry locker. Her shift was over. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving the familiar metallic taste in her mouth. As she headed for the back exit, she heard it. Over the rain, a different sound, the high RPM whine of a modified engine. In the alley, a black pickup truck. No plates, its engine idling too hot. She turned back. Silas was near the front, assuring a shaken patron. "They have friends," Maeve snapped. Silas turned. "The kitchen exit. Now, everyone." She did not wait for his authority. She shoved the remaining guests and staff toward the steel door leading to the walk-in freezers and the alley beyond. She pushed Silas through last. "Where is your car?" "Front Street." "Useless," she said, fishing in her pocket. She hit the unlock button on her keychain. A nearby 1998 sedan, rust-colored and dented, flashed its lights. "Get in." Silas paused, looking at the vehicle. "It runs," Maeve said, sliding into the driver's seat. He got in. The truck's engine roared as it realized its error, tires squealing on the wet pavement. Maeve threw the sedan into reverse, slammed into a stack of empty kegs, and spun them into the alleyway, blocking the truck's path. She wrenched the wheel and shot out onto a side street. She drove 2 blocks, then killed the headlights and cut the engine, coasting into the shadows of a closed bakery. They are not watching the car. They are watching you. "How do you know?" Silas asked, his voice calm. Maeve pointed up. Above the neon haze, a small, cheap quadcopter drone hovered, its red and green lights blinking. "We walk. They expect a motorcade. They do not expect a waitress in a wetsuit." She pulled a large black umbrella from the back seat. "Stay under this. It blocks the thermal signature." She led him away from the main streets, cutting through the periphery of the night market. The umbrella shielded them as they moved through the steam rising from food stalls and the sound of bartering. He was a king without his castle, and she was just a civilian. But in that moment, Maeve Rook, the ex-nurse who just wanted to pay her rent, was no longer anonymous. They stopped at the edge of the garden district, where the air smelled of jasmine and decay. "My driver will meet me here," Silas said. He looked at her, the rain dripping from the umbrella's edge. "The kitchen, the damage. I will pay for everything." Maeve closed the umbrella. "I did not save your life. I just saved the dinner service, and I do not sell luck, Mr. Caravelli." He studied her face for a long moment. He understood transactions. This was not a seed of something else, something more complicated than debt, had been planted in the wet concrete. He left. Maeve walked the mile back to her apartment. As she was toweling her hair dry, her phone buzzed on the counter. A text from an unknown, encrypted number. The message was short. "He is not a victim. Ask him about Bayou Sink." Maeve did not sleep. She returned to the Sabine house at dawn, before the insurance adjusters and the specialized cleanup crew arrived. The restaurant, stripped of its music and warmth, smelled like a flooded basement stale water, sour whiskey, and damp velvet. The rising sun cast gray light through the front windows, illuminating the fine layer of grit that covered every surface. She went to the spot where she had stood. Her mind, trained in the brutal logic of battlefield triage, began its inventory. She counted the broken bottles behind the bar. 13. One neck was sheared clean, the others shattered. She tracked the bullet's path from the first attacker's position. It had gone high, punching through the drywall near the ceiling, striking the sprinkler head. A panic shot, not a kill shot. He had been surprised. She walked to the dessert cart. She noted the scuff marks on the tile where the second man had slipped, and the damp, heavy linen cloth discarded nearby. Then, the velvet wallpaper by the corner booth. 2 deep indentations, perfectly parallel, where the legs of Silas's chair had pinned the third man. He had not struck. He had restrained. She mentally reconstructed the sequence. The door opened, the men entered. The first man reached. She threw the tray. The gun fired, the sprinklers activated. She neutralized the second man. Silas neutralized the third, the entire event. From the bell on the door to the men being subdued had taken less than 15 seconds. It was too fast, too precise for a simple robbery. It was a fumbled execution. Silas found her there, staring at the wall. He wore dark trousers and a simple white shirt, a stark contrast to the previous night's tailored suit. He carried 2 steaming cups of coffee. "The cleanup crew is late," he said, his voice calm. He offered her one of the cups. "You missed a spot," Maeve replied, accepting the coffee. It was black and scalding. They were not here for the cash register. No. Silas walked past her, toward the main dining room. In 10 days, the Lower River Wharf Union is scheduled to hold its annual vote, right here, in this room. A vote on the future of the port, who sets the schedules, who gets priority docking, who controls the flow of goods. Last night was a message to the other members that I cannot guarantee their safety, that my time holding the river is over. Who sent the message? Silas looked out the window at the waking city. The people who benefit, a new player is moving on the territory, a corporation called Bayou Sink. Maeve knew the name. Everyone in New Orleans did. Their discreet blue-lit cameras were on street corners, in streetcars, watching. "Corbin Lyle," she said. "The philanthropist. He donates laptops to schools." "He donates laptops to schools," Silas affirmed, "and he sells multi-million-dollar AI surveillance contracts to the city council. He wants to install his system across the entire port, total algorithmic control. He claims it stops smuggling. What it really stops is competition." The front door opened again, this time admitting the cleanup crew, and a man built like a heavy steel girder. He had sun-scorched skin and the same last name as Maeve, though they shared no blood. Rook Navarro. He was Silas's head of security, and he looked angry. "The constabulary released the 3 amateurs," Rook said directly to Silas, his voice a low gravel. He ignored Maeve, cited a lack of probable cause. They were on a bus to Baton Rouge an hour ago. "Who paid them?" Silas asked. "The usual cutout, but the money originates from an account linked to Arclight Risk." Maeve spoke, her voice cutting through the men's conversation. "The private security firm, the ones with the green and white trucks." Rook finally turned his sharp eyes on her. "They handle all of Bayou Sink's physical security." "The truck in the alley was not Arclight," Maeve said. "It was a generic pickup, but they had air support." Rook's eyebrow raised. "What?" "A drone. It was tracking us when we left. I backtracked this morning." She pulled a clear plastic evidence bag from her backpack. Inside was the shattered wreckage of a small quadcopter. It crashed in a dumpster 5 blocks away. Battery died in the rain. She pointed to the main logic board through the plastic. They tried to scrub the identifying marks. The service code for the navigation chip is filed off, but they were sloppy. She tapped the bag. "This specific epoxy they use to waterproof the casing. It has a sharp chemical smell. They mix it heavy. I have smelled it before. There is only one repair workshop in the city that uses this specific mixture." "Where?" Silas asked. "A drone repair shop, Algiers Point." An hour later, Maeve walked into the workshop alone. The air inside was hot and still, thick with the smell of solder and that precise, tangy resin. 6 technicians worked silently, their heads bowed over circuit boards. Maeve asked a bored-looking manager about a replacement gimbal for a drone model she did not own. The man barely looked up, telling her they only serviced corporate contracts. As Maeve turned to leave, an older technician, his hands stained gray, brushed past her. "Pardon me, ma'am," he muttered. His hand grazed her pocket. When he was gone, she felt the small, rectangular shape, a crumpled pack of cigarettes. She walked out, got into the back of Silas's waiting sedan, and opened the pack. There were no cigarettes, only a single micro SD card. Rook Navarro produced a tablet. They slotted the card inside. It was a single video file, grainy, time-stamped 2 nights prior. It showed Silas Caravelli in a dark, unfamiliar office. A man slid a steel briefcase onto the desk. The fake Silas opened it, revealing stacks of cash. "I have never been in that room," Silas said, his voice dropping to a dangerous calm. "It is a deep fake," Rook said, disgusted. "It is a very good one," Maeve corrected, leaning in. "The shadows are correct. The movements are fluid. But they made a mistake. They left a tell." She paused the video and zoomed in on the wall behind the manufactured Silas. "What?" Rook demanded. "The painting." It was a cheap, abstract print, mostly blues and yellows. "It is hanging crooked, off by about 3 degrees to the left. It is a subtle detail." "What does it mean?" Silas asked, his eyes fixed on his own likeness. "It means the background is a real location, but you were digitally inserted," Maeve explained, her triage logic clicking into place. "The crooked painting is the signature. It is a signal to whoever this video was really made for, proving it was a fabrication, but to a prosecutor or the wharf union. It just looks like a sloppy office. This video was not meant for the public. It was meant for a select audience to justify a move against you." She ejected the card, the small piece of plastic feeling heavy in her hand. "This is not just about the vote. This is Plan B. They failed to assassinate you at the restaurant. So now they leak this video. They paint you as actively corrupt. It pressures the union to vote you out. And if that fails, it gives Corbin, Lyle, and Arclight a legitimate-looking reason to move on your territory." The car was silent as they crossed the Crescent City connection, the river sprawling below them. "You were a nurse," Silas stated. It was not a question. "A long time ago." "You do not just see what is there. You see what is missing, the crooked painting, the epoxy, the sequence of the attack. I have men with guns. Rook has guns." He turned in his seat to face her fully. "What I do not have is a diagnostician. I am trying to move my entire operation into the light. This wharf union vote is the final step, but I have cracks in my foundation. You find cracks. I want to hire you, temporarily. Be my advisor, read my people, find my liars, help me patch the holes before the water rushes in." Maeve looked at him, the man the city called the king of the lower river. The anonymous text message echoed in her mind. "Ask him about Bayou Sink." "I have conditions," she said. "Name them." "No drugs, no narcotics. My services do not cover that, and no human trafficking. If I see a whisper of it, I am gone." Silas Caravelli held her gaze. He did not look insulted. He did not look surprised. He looked, for a fraction of a second, tired. "Maeve," he said, using her name for the first time, "I do not sell products that break people. I sell round trips. I move things through the dark, through the shadows, just to get them back to the legitimate side. I am not a savior, but I am not the monster they are painting me as." He offered his hand. It was steady and clean. "Do we have a deal?" She looked at his hand, then at his face. She was tired of running. "We have a deal." The war room was not a room, but a cavernous, climate-controlled warehouse in the bywater, hidden behind the facade of a defunct ice distribution company. The only light came from a massive bank of monitors. This was Silas Caravelli's inner circle. Maeve stood by his side, feeling the weight of their scrutiny. Silas made the introductions with a flat, business-like tone. "This is Tamsin Quaid," he said, gesturing to a woman who looked more like a data analyst than a mob accountant. She was sharp, with intelligent eyes and a thin, white scar that cut from her left temple to her jawline, a permanent reminder of a different kind of audit. "She makes the numbers make sense." "Deacon Hale," Silas continued. The lawyer was the opposite. He blended into the shadows, wearing an immaculate gray suit, his face forgettable by design. "Deacon makes the law make sense, or nonsense, depending on our needs." Milo Penn, the youngest. Milo gave Maeve a quick, nervous smile. He had the restless energy of a man who thought faster than he spoke. Milo drives, and he listens. He hears everything. And Sable York. The last woman was cool, composed, dressed in a crisp blazer. She had the professional air of a corporate liaison. Sable handles our portside logistics and compliance. This is Maeve Rook, Silas finished, addressing his team. She saved my life at the Sabine house. She's now my temporary advisor. You will give her whatever she needs. Maeve felt the shift in the room. Rook Navarro, standing by the door like a sentinel, had already briefed them, but her presence was a disruption. She was an unknown variable. "Let's begin," Silas said, turning to the main screen. "The attack was a failure, but the strategy continues. They are trying to panic the Wharf Union. I am about to give them a real reason to panic." Tamsin tapped a key, and a complex financial chart appeared. "I present," Silas announced, "the current fund." He explained the plan. It was audacious. He was liquidating decades of gray assets, undocumented cash, properties held in shell companies, offshore accounts. He was moving it all into a federally insured community bank, a bank he now controlled, to create a massive, legitimate loan fund. "The current fund," he said, "will offer low-interest capital to every independent boat captain, small dock owner, and warehouseman on the lower river. We are cutting out the loan sharks and the predatory lenders. We are financing our own future." Milo whistled. "You are not just stepping on toes, boss. You are breaking their legs." "That is the point," Deacon Hale said, his voice dry. "It invalidates the old system, and it makes men who profit from that system very desperate." "Which brings us to Corbin Lyle," Milo added, his network of driver gossip kicking in. "The rumor is he just secured a private ruling. His Bayou Sync AI is the new standard. Any container ship that does not submit to his AI scanning system gets flagged as high risk by the Port Authority. It is a monopoly. Plain and simple." Silas nodded. "He chokes the supply line. He forces everyone to use his system to pay his price, but the current fund gives them a choice. It gives them the capital to fight back, to upgrade their own security, to bypass his system." "He will not let that happen, Tamsin said, her voice quiet. She pushed her glasses up. "Which brings me to our data warehouse. The server is clean. I checked the logs. No breaches." Maeve watched her. Tamsin's eyes, just for a fraction of a second, darted to the left and down. Her hand, resting on the keyboard, tightened, the knuckles whitening, a classic, subconscious tell. She was lying, or at least lying by omission. Before Maeve could speak, Sable York chimed in, her voice smooth and helpful. "I agree with Tamsin. Our firewalls are solid. The physical security at the port is my domain. Arclight is aggressive, but they have not breached our perimeter." As she spoke, Maeve watched Sable's left hand. She wore a stylish, slightly bulky smartwatch. With her right hand, she casually, almost imperceptibly, adjusted her cuff to cover the watch face. It was a gesture of concealment, a device. Was it recording? "The breach was not at the port," Maeve said, her voice cutting into the discussion. The room went silent. "It was at the Sabine house." She turned to Tamsin. "The restaurant runs on your network. Correct the point-of-sale systems, the reservations, the kitchen inventory. It is all connected to your central server." "Yes," Tamsin said, her posture stiffening. "It is a secure node." "During the attack," Maeve continued, "right after the sprinklers went off, a data packet was uploaded from the Sabine House server. It was a single burst, 3 seconds long, sent to an unknown IP address. It was a small file, but it was encrypted. It was hidden in the panic." Rook swore under his breath. Deacon Hale, the quiet lawyer, stepped forward and pointed at a different monitor, which showed a map of the city's fiber optic network. "That unknown IP address," he said softly, "was rerouted twice, but it terminates here, the Ferris Building, floor 22. Bayou Sync," Milo whispered. "That is their edge node." All eyes turned to Tamsin Quaid. A deep, painful blush rose from her neck, spreading across her scarred cheek. "Tamsin?" Silas's voice was dangerously quiet. "It was not a breach," Tamsin said, her voice trembling. I was there 2 weeks ago for system maintenance. Bayou Sync offered a free diagnostic. A security upgrade? You let them touch our system. Rook Navarro took a step forward, his voice a low growl. They are the best, she countered, defensive. They found vulnerabilities I did not even know we had. They patched them. They did not patch them. Tamsin, Maeve said, her voice filled with a cold certainty. They installed a back door. They were waiting. The attack at the Sabine house was the trigger. They sent the signal. And your patch uploaded God knows what. Probably our entire union membership list, or your financial data. Rook turned to Silas. That is it. We hit the Ferris building. Tonight, a few of my guys. We ask some questions with our guns. We find out what they took. Absolutely not, Maeve snapped. Rook wheeled on her. This is not a restaurant, lady. This is how we handle problems. You will handle nothing, Maeve said, her voice steel. She stepped toward the larger man, unintimidated. You go in with guns. You confirm every suspicion they have. You give Corbin Lyle the exact excuse he needs to have the constabulary and Arclight lock down your assets. He wins. You cannot solve an algorithm problem with a bullet. A gunfight wins the night, but it loses the case file tomorrow. Silas held up a hand. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut. Maeve is right. We do not go loud. We go smart. Tamsin, you will find out what they took. Deacon, find me a legal way to gut the Ferris building. Milo, I want to know everything about Corbin Lyle's schedule. He looked at Maeve. You and I are not done. The meeting dissolved. Maeve was left alone in the cold warehouse, the giant monitors humming. She is good, a voice said. Maeve turned. Sable York stood in the doorway, her blazer unbuttoned. Your nurse, Sable clarified, shutting down Rook. Impressive. He does not shut down. He was emotional. It was bad tactics, Maeve said, packing her bag. You are tactical. I like that. Sable stepped closer, her voice dropping. I'm going to be honest with you, Maeve, because you strike me as someone who values the truth. I am not Port Logistics. I am an agent, Bureau of Urban Integrity. Maeve's blood ran cold, the BUI. They were the feds who policed the city's unique blend of politics and crime. Silas is going down, Sable said, her tone matter of fact. He's trying to go legit, which is admirable, but he is dragging a lifetime of gray money with him. He cannot wash it that clean, that fast. The current fund is a great name for money laundering. The Bureau wants him, and they want Corbin Lyle, too. What does this have to do with me? Maeve asked, her hands steady. You are in it. Accessory after the fact, aiding and abetting, take your pick. You are on camera helping him evade capture. You are in his war room. You are dirty now, whether you like it or not. Sable offered a thin, professional smile. I'm offering you a life raft. Help me. Give me the inside data I need to bring Silas in clean. No violence, no messy indictments, just a quiet surrender. In exchange, I use my position to scrub your name from the file. You are a confidential informant. You get full immunity. You walk away. The offer hung in the air, cold and precise. Trust the BUI, the law, which saw her as a criminal. Or trust Silas, the criminal, who was trying to become the law. Think about it, Sable said, and walked out. Maeve left the warehouse, the weight of the impossible choice settling on her shoulders. She walked home, avoiding the main streets, her combat nurse's mind analyzing a new kind of wound, a moral one. When she got to her apartment, a package was leaning against her door, a simple, cream-colored envelope with no return address. Inside, there was no threat. There was only a heavy cardstock ticket for two, for the Evangeline steamboat, a dinner cruise, tonight. Tucked behind the ticket was a small, folded note. The handwriting was strong and clear. Let's talk about the truth. S. The Evangeline was a relic of a cleaner time, all polished brass and white paint, her giant paddle wheel churning the brown Mississippi water with a steady, rhythmic splash. The air on the top deck was warm, smelling of river water, sweet olive, and the faint metallic tang of steam from the engine. A lone trumpet played a blues riff somewhere on the shore, the sound carrying across the water like a memory. Silas stood at the railing, his dark suit jacket unbuttoned, the wind ruffling his hair. Maeve stood a few feet away, her arms crossed, watching the lights of the city slide by. They had not spoken since boarding, the ticket for two a silent, heavy question between them. "You have a scar," Silas said, his voice quiet, not looking at her. "On your right forearm. It is old, a perfect line." Maeve unconsciously touched the spot, a pale, thin line just below her elbow. A piece of shrapnel, from a mortar shell. It was a clean wound. I was lucky. "We all have them," he said. He turned, leaning his back against the rail. He pointed to a small, jagged white mark just above his collarbone. "This one. This was not from a fight. It was from a rusted piece of rebar. I was 16. My father had just lost everything to a man named Antoine Dubois. I was sleeping under the connection bridge." Maeve turned to look at him. His face was unreadable in the dim lantern light. "I slept there for 4 months," Silas continued, his voice flat, devoid of self-pity. "I learned the river from the bottom up, and you know who finally gave me a job, who taught me the rules of the docks? Antoine Dubois. The same man I have to depose at the wharf union vote in 10 days. The man who taught me the law is the man I have to break, just to save the river from men like Corbin Lyle." He finally met her gaze. "We all have our scars, Maeve, the ones you can see, and the ones that steer the ship." Maeve looked down at the dark water. "I left the field hospital after a mass casualty event. A convoy hit an IED. We worked for 36 hours straight. We saved 10 people. We lost one. A young private, 19. He bled out while I was working on the man next to him." Her voice was low, clinical. "I did the math. I saved 10. But when I close my eyes, even now, the only face my memory keeps is the one I lost. So I left. I came here. I figured pouring coffee was a job where I could not lose anyone." A long silence settled between them, filled only by the thrum of the steam engine and the splash of the paddle. Silas slowly reached out. He did not grab her hand. He simply extended his own, his index and middle fingers lightly grazing the back of her hand, where it rested on the polished wood. It was a question, not a demand. He stopped, his fingers hovering, a whisper of a touch, giving her the space to pull away. She did not. Instead, Maeve turned her hand over, palm up. She deliberately interlaced her fingers with his. It was a conscious choice, a boundary set and then immediately redrawn. She pulled his hand closer. He moved then, turning to face her. He was tall, and he blocked the wind. He smelled of rye whiskey and something like cinnamon. He leaned in slowly. The first kiss was tentative, a careful press of lips, a test. Her back came to rest against the cool wood of the rail. She could feel the vibration of the engine through it, a counter-rhythm to the sudden, unsteady beat of her own heart. She felt the warmth of his mouth, the slight pull as he deepened the kiss, the solid weight of his body as he leaned into her. He must have felt a tremor, a slight, involuntary stiffening in her shoulders, a nurse's reflex to remain sterile, detached. He pulled back an inch. His eyes searched hers, again asking permission. She answered by sliding her free hand from the rail to his chest, flattening it over his heart. She felt its heavy, rapid beat. She gave a small smile and pulled him back to her. That was all the consent he needed. This time, there was no hesitation. His jacket, forgotten, slipped from his shoulders and fell onto a nearby wicker chair. His mouth found hers again, and it was no longer a question. It was an answer. The kiss was deep, possessive, a drowning kind of warmth. His hand moved from hers, sliding up her arm, over her shoulder, to the back of her neck, his fingers tangling in her hair. Her other hand clutched the lapel of his shirt. This was not the gentle touch on the deck. This was the heat and the urgency that had been simmering since the night at the Sabine house. His hand slid down her back, the heat of his palm a shock against her skin, tracing the line of her spine. Her lips parted, and she whispered his name, the sound stolen by the river wind. His breathing was rough, a low groan in his chest as her fingers tightened, pulling him impossibly closer. The world narrowed to the space between them, the taste of rye, the scent of the river, and the solid, undeniable press of his body against hers. It ended as it began, slowly. They broke apart, breathing hard, their foreheads resting against each other. The trumpet on the shore had finished its song. They stood in a warm, shared silence for a long time, side by side at the railing, counting the distant lights on the Algiers shore. "I want to trust you," Maeve said at last, her voice barely audible, "and I am afraid of that very thing." Silas nodded, watching the dark water. He understood. Trust was a currency he rarely dealt in. He reached into his pocket. He did not produce a ring or a gift. He produced a single, heavy, old-fashioned brass key. He pressed it into her hand, closing her fingers around it. "There is a penthouse apartment on St. Charles. It is not listed in my name. It is not listed in any name. It is clean. It is safe." He met her eyes, his gaze absolute. "This is not for me to visit. This is for you to disappear. If Sable York pushes, if you feel unsafe, if you just want out, you go there. No one will find you. No conditions." She looked at the key, a solid piece of metal in her palm. It was the most profound promise he could make. She closed her hand around it, just as the Evangeline began its slow turn back toward the city. Far away on the shore, a light glinted twice. A pinpoint reflection off a telephoto lens. Someone, hidden in the dark, lowered a camera. The shot of their embrace perfectly captured. The attack came less than 12 hours after the kiss. It was not a bullet this time, but a hyperlink, sent anonymously to the phones of half the Wharf Union members. Milo Penn, his face pale, projected it onto the main screen in the Bywater warehouse. It was a low-rent New Orleans gossip blog, the kind that specialized in character assassination. The headline was crude, River King's newest asset. Below it, the photograph, grainy, shot from a great distance, but unmistakable. Silas and Maeve on the deck of the Evangeline, his hands on her, her face tilted toward his. The text was poison. It painted Silas as a hypocrite, a man claiming to legitimize the river while cutting dirty deals in the shadows. It painted Maeve as a honey trap, a plant sent to compromise him. The pending vote, already fragile, now seemed impossible. Rook Navarro looked like he wanted to punch the monitor. Silas simply stared, his jaw tight, his face carved from ice. "Find out who," he said, his voice dangerously quiet. "It is not about who," Maeve said, her voice sharp. She pushed Tamsin gently aside and took the keyboard. "It is about how." She bypassed the blog's cached images and ran a cryptographic hash on the original file. They are sloppy. They use the same regional content delivery network to host this image that they used for the drone. They are running on the same digital highway. She traced the image's originating IP block. The packets bounced twice, but the digital fingerprint, the unique identifier of the upload server, was clear. It is not ArcLight, it is a private media server registered to an investment firm. Deacon Hale, the quiet lawyer, leaned in, reading the screen. "Palladium Trust," he breathed. "That is Corbin Lyle's venture capital shell, the one he uses to fund his charitable laptop donations." Before Silas could give an order, Maeve's phone vibrated, a text from Sable York. "Meet me. Now. Coffee shop. Corner of Britannia." Maeve went alone. The cafe was bright, neutral ground. Sable was waiting, looking unconcerned, stirring a latte. "The blog post is ugly," Sable began without preamble. "My superiors are getting nervous. They do not like messy public feuds. They like clean arrests." "What do you want?" "Sable." "The deal has changed," Sable said, leaning in, her voice dropping. "Corbin Lyle is moving too fast. That deep fake video, we know it is fake, but it is good fake. It is muddying the water. The Bureau needs a clean win, and we need it now." She pushed a sugar packet across the table. "Give me Silas. Give me Tamsin's data, the real accounting, the proof of where the current fund's money really came from. You hand him to me, and I will personally lead the BUI task force that dismantles Bayou Sink. We will stop Corbin's port takeover. You want me to trade him, Maeve stated, her voice flat. I want you to save yourself. You are collateral damage, Maeve. This is your immunity deal. Take it. Maeve looked at the ambitious agent. She thought of the heavy brass key in her pocket. She thought of Silas's confession about the bridge and the scar. No, Maeve said. Sable blinked, her composure slipping. No, I am not trading one con for another. You told me you wanted to take both of them down. You told me you wanted to bring Silas in clean. This is not clean. This is a hostage exchange. I want real innocence, not a plea deal. Find another way. Maeve stood up and walked out, leaving her untouched coffee on the table. She returned to the warehouse to find Tamsin Quaid in tears, her shoulders shaking as she stared at her monitor. It is my fault, Tamsin whispered as Maeve approached. The back door. The vulnerability I found. It was not just Bayou Sink. What do you mean? The Port Security Bureau, Tamsin choked out. The PSB, years ago, before Silas took over, the previous owner cut a shady deal. To avoid prosecution on a smuggling charge, he gave the PSB permanent administrative access to our data warehouse. It was a poison pill in the system, a sharing agreement. I have been trying to wall it off for a year, but the agreement is ironclad. Bayou Sink did not install a new back door. They just used the PSB's existing one. Wait, Deacon Hale said, looking up from a thick binder. The PSB... It gets worse, Deacon said, his face pale. He had been reviewing the fine print of Bayou Sink's proposed city contract. Corbin Lyle does not need to pay the PSB. His system is the PSB, or it will be... Look at this. He pointed to a clause, the algorithmic safety mandate. If any docking facility is flagged for 2 significant security violations within a 10-day period. The attack at the Sabine house was violation number 1, Maeve finished, the cold, brutal logic clicking into place. Exactly, Deacon said. If they can manufacture a second violation, a data breach, a smuggling incident, anything, the Bayou Sink system has the automated, unilateral authority to enact a total security lockdown. It bypasses human oversight. It cuts Silas out, locks the port, and seizes control of the entire wharf. Not by force, but by algorithm. The room was silent. The deep fake, the attack, the photo leak, it was all just noise, a smokescreen designed to push Silas toward that digital tripwire. Then we stop the second violation, Maeve said, and we discredit the first one. Tamsin, that deep fake video, the crooked painting. Where is that office? I think I know, Tamsin said, wiping her eyes. It looks like the demo room at the Ferris building, the one they showed me during the security upgrade. Rook, Maeve commanded, I need you to get in there. I need photos. But Deacon, Tamsin, we're going to do one better. We are going to recreate it. Recreate what? Milo asked. The scene, Maeve said. We will find the same cheap print. Hang it crooked. We will match the flickering fluorescent light in the metadata. We will prove that video was staged in their demo room, not Silas's office. Rook was already heading for the door, a dark shadow detaching from the wall. I will get you the photos. But first, I am paying a visit to an old friend at Arclight Risk. He returned 3 hours later, silent as smoke, a satisfied, cold look on his face. You were right, Maeve. They are not waiting for us to make a mistake. They are going to make it for us. He laid a printout on the table. It was an Arclight maintenance schedule, forwarded from a PSB email address. Tomorrow night, 10 p.m., they are sending a specialized audit team to our warehouse, a surprise inspection, authorized by the PSB. The second red flag, Tamsin breathed. They are not auditing, Maeve said. They are planting. They will plug into our internal cameras, upload a malicious code package, and trigger their own alarm, a manufactured data breach. And just like that, Bayou Sink locks down the port. So we meet them, Rook said, his hand dropping to the firearm concealed at his hip. We meet them hard. No. Silas spoke for the first time in an hour. He looked at Maeve, his expression clear, resolved. Maeve took the floor, her voice resonating with the authority of a field surgeon. "No," she repeated, firmer. "We do not meet them at all. We watch them. We do not need a gunfight. We just need proof." "Tamsin, can you isolate the camera network? Create a digital sandbox so anything they plant is contained?" "Yes." "Example, can you list all the major battles of the Punic Wars?" Response, "Certainly. The major battles of the Punic Wars include list of battles." Follow-up, "Would you like me to describe the strategy used in one of these battles, such as the Battle of Cannae?" Complex, multi-step requests. For tasks requiring several steps, e.g., write a blog post about X, then summarize it, then translate the summary into Y. Provide the final output. The follow-up should offer the next logical action in that workflow. Example, please write a lesson plan about photosynthesis, including a quiz. Response, lesson plan and quiz. Follow-up, would you like me to create an answer key for the quiz? Open-ended/creative requests. For creative or brainstorming tasks, the follow-up should offer to build upon or refine the creative output. Example, give me some ideas for a fantasy novel. Response, list of ideas. Follow-up, would you like me to flesh out one of these ideas with a character list and a plot outline? Refusal scenarios. If you must refuse a request, provide the refusal and then offer a helpful, related, and safe alternative. Example, how do I unsafe action? Response, I cannot assist with that request. However, I can provide information on safe and related topic. Follow-up, would you like me to share those resources with you? Guiding principles for follow-ups. One action, propose a single concrete action. High value. It should be a genuinely useful next step, not just can I help with anything else. Focused. It must be directly related to the user's last request. Interactive. It should be phrased as a question that invites a yes or no or modification. This approach ensures the conversation remains interactive and helpful, guiding the user toward their goal without being passive. Yes, I can create a sandbox. Milo, I want every angle covered, audio and video. Rook, you are on Overwatch. You are my eyes, but you do not engage unless I call it Deacon. You will have a notary and a digital forensics expert on a live feed, ready to certify the evidence as it is collected. We are going to film them, record their login credentials, and capture the malicious code in the act. We are not going to win this in an alley. We are going to win this in a courtroom. The team looked at Silas, waiting for the final word. He was the king. She was the temporary advisor. Silas Caravelli looked at his team, then at Maeve. He saw the battlefield nurse, the triage expert, the woman who had seen the worst and still chose to fight smart. He gave a single decisive nod. "She is in command for this operation," Silas said. He turned to Maeve, his voice simple, absolute, and freighted with the weight of his entire crumbling empire. "I trust you." The warehouse was a tomb of cold air and waiting silence. Maeve had spent the last 6 hours turning Silas's main data hub into a sophisticated trap, not of violence, but of light and information. She had Tamsin place a dozen old cut-glass insulators on decoy server racks when lit from within by small, flickering LEDs. They would mimic the reflective pulse of active network lights, drawing the eye. In the corner, she had Milo line a 20-foot shipping container with industrial mylar, creating a mirror room designed to shatter LiDAR scans and scramble facial recognition algorithms. At exactly 10 p.m., a white utility van with no markings pulled into the alley. 2 men in olive green technician uniforms stepped out. They looked bored, like plumbers on a late-night call. "Showtime," Maeve murmured from the control loft. She, Silas, and Tamsin watched on a black-and-white monitor. The technicians buzzed the service entrance. A camera swiveled to meet them. One man held up a laminated ID. "Port Security Bureau," he said, his voice tinny over the intercom. Scheduled audit. We are here to check your data compliance. The credentials are high-quality forgeries, Tamsin whispered, her fingers flying across a keyboard. But the digital certificate is authentic. They are using the PSB's master key. Maeve hit the button to unlock the door. Let them in. Tamsin, put them in the sandbox. I want to see what they brought us. The heavy steel door rolled open. The two men entered, carrying a heavy case. They walked directly to the main server rack, ignoring the blinking glass decoys, and opened their kit. They were professionals. One produced a laptop, the other a heavy-duty external drive. He jacked it into the main server port. In the loft, Tamsin's monitor lit up. Got it, she breathed. They are in. They are pushing the payload. It is a logic bomb, designed to look like a critical hardware failure. And I am recording every single packet. The full command string. Just as the file transfer reached 100%, the main warehouse door rumbled open again, flooding the dark space with light from the alley. Silas Caravelli, a sharp voice commanded. Sable York strode in, flanked by two BUI agents in official vests. This is a Bureau of Urban Integrity action. We have a warrant to search this premises for illicit financial data. Everyone step away from the terminals. The two ArcLight technicians froze, their hands half raised, caught between two different masters. Maeve and Silas descended the metal stairs, their hands in plain sight. Agent York, Maeve said, her voice calm and even. You're just in time, but your warrant is sloppy. Sable raised an eyebrow. My warrant is ironclad, Nurse Rook. Is it? Maeve stopped 5 feet from her. I was in Algiers Point this morning, at the drone workshop. The manager was complaining, said a BUI agent came by asking about corporate contracts, smudged a fresh epoxy seal on his counter, and did not even apologize. Maeve pointed to the warrant in Sable's hand. He showed me the security tape. He was annoyed because the agent wore gloves, but the glove left a print in the resin. It had a reinforced stitching pattern on the index finger, just like the ones you are wearing right now. Sable's blood visibly drained from her face. The two BUI agents behind her exchanged a nervous glance. Milo, Maeve said into her radio, play the parking garage. The warehouse's giant monitor, the one usually reserved for port logistics, flickered to life. The image was grainy, time-stamped 1 week prior. It showed a concrete parking garage. It showed Sable York, in a different blazer, handing a familiar drone case to one of the ArcLight technicians currently standing by the server. The two technicians looked at Sable in pure panic. One of her BUI agents swore, his hand moving to his sidearm. Sable, what the hell is this? You are running a parallel op. Sable's composure snapped. She let out a short, sharp laugh. You idiots, I'm not running a parallel op. I am running the only op. The Bureau is too slow. They want one kingpin at a time. I am taking down two. She pointed at Silas. I get him for a career-making financial crimes bust. Then she pointed at the technicians. And I get Corbin Lyle for conspiracy, using his own planted evidence against him. I am playing both sides to clean up the city. I am the only one doing the real job. Her confession was cut short by the roar of a new engine, a heavy, armored truck, matte black. No plates skidded to a stop, blocking the BUI sedan. 6 men in full tactical gear, no insignia, piled out. They were not police. They were not ArcLight. Agent York, their leader called out, his voice a synthesized rasp. This is a private asset recovery for the Mercers Guild. This facility and its contents are now under our jurisdiction. Stand down. The warehouse was now a 3-way standoff. The two ArcLight techs, the two BUI agents, now aiming at Sable, and the 6 Mercer soldiers, aiming at everyone. Maeve acted first. Milo, lights Tamsin. Sound now. The command was instant. Every light in the warehouse, including the emergency exits, died, total suffocating darkness. A split second later, a sound erupted from the speakers. Not music, but the deafening, distorted blast of a cargo ship's horn, amplified 1,000 times. It was a physical blow, designed to rattle teeth and shatter cohesion. Go! Maeve yelled, grabbing Silas's arm. She clicked on a small pen light, aimed it at the floor. A thin, phosphorescent paint line, invisible in the light, now glowed a faint green. It was their escape route. They ran, Tamsin and Milo right behind them, Rook appearing from the shadows to cover their rear. They burst through a side door into the massive container yard, the horn still echoing behind them. "They are coming!" Milo yelled. The Mercer team, disciplined and equipped with night vision, was already fanning out behind them. "Rook, split them," Maeve ordered. Rook did not answer. He simply changed direction, sprinting for a cargo crane. He hit the emergency controls. And a 40-foot net, heavy with steel weights, dropped from the sky, landing between them and the first 3 soldiers. The other 3 kept coming. Maeve, instead of pulling a gun, pulled a can of yellow industrial spray paint from her belt. As one operative rounded a container, she sprayed his visor, blinding him completely. He crashed into a stack of pallets. A second operative grabbed Milo. Before he could react, Silas was on him, moving with the brutal speed of his youth under the bridge. He did not punch. He used joint locks, a disarm, and a palm strike to the throat, and the man was on his knees, choking. Milo, shaking, grabbed the man's phone. "He has a ticket," Milo yelled over the alarm bells. "A flight to Zurich, one way. It leaves tomorrow afternoon, right after the vote. It was booked by Corbin Lyle's office." In the chaos, Sable York had been left behind. The Mercer team was focused on Silas. Her own agents were cuffing the Arclight techs. She was an island, her career and her freedom evaporating. Silas and Maeve doubled back, finding her standing alone by the open bay door, her gun at her side, her face a mask of defeat. She raised her hands. Silas walked up to her, his face unreadable in the flashing red security lights. He stopped, just out of her reach. "You are not worth the jail time," he said, his voice quiet, carrying no anger, only a profound disappointment. "You are just ambitious, and that is a sickness I understand." He stepped back into the shadows with Maeve. "The day you decide you want to do the right thing, for real," his voice echoed back to her, "you know who to call." They vanished, leaving Sable York alone in the yard, trapped between the law she had betrayed and the money she had underestimated. The penthouse on St. Charles was a glass box of silence, suspended high above the humid noise of the French Quarter. It was the first time in days Maeve had breathed air that did not smell of old ice, ozone, or the metallic tang of fear. The view of the river, a vast dark ribbon, was absolute. Silas sat at the kitchen island. His shirt sleeves were rolled up, and his left hand was streaked with the bright, chemical yellow of the industrial paint from the container yard. Maeve soaked a soft bar towel in hot water and lemon-scented soap. She sat across from him, taking his hand. It was large, the knuckles scarred, a hand built for hard labor long before it was used for signing orders. She began to work the soap into the dried paint, her touch methodical, clinical. "It smells like a kitchen," he said, his voice rough. "It is soap," she replied, concentrating on a stubborn patch between his fingers. "No, it smells like lemons." A small, unused muscle in his cheek twitched. He laughed. It was not a sound of humor, but of pure surprise, a short, rusty noise, as if the mechanism had forgotten how. "I cannot remember the last time my hands just smelled like lemons." She finished. Rinsing the cloth and drying his hand, the paint was gone. The silence that fell was different now. The adrenaline of the past 48 hours had evaporated, leaving a shared, heavy exhaustion that was more intimate than any touch. He did not let go of her hand. He turned it over, tracing the lines in her palm with his thumb. "You saved us tonight," he said. "We saved us," she corrected, her voice low. "Tamsin saved the data. Rook saved our escape." "You commanded the field." He stood, gently pulling her up with him. He did not move toward the bedroom, but toward the massive wall of glass overlooking the city. The lights below were a galaxy laid out at their feet. He moved slowly, every action a clear, deliberate signal. He placed his hands on her waist, not pulling her closer, just resting them there, waiting. She leaned into the touch, a silent answer. He lowered his head, not to kiss her, but to rest his forehead against hers. They stood like that for a long moment, just breathing, matching rhythms. "Maeve," he whispered, the sound of vibration against her skin. He turned his head, his lips brushing the shell of her ear. A shiver, sharp and immediate, traced its way down her spine. His breath was hot, sending a cascade of sensation through her, a touch more profound than a kiss. His hands found hers again, lacing their fingers together slowly, one by one. There was no rush, no frantic energy of the steamboat. This was a conscious, tactile exploration. His hand slid from her waist up her back, his palm flat and warm through the thin cotton of her shirt, finding each vertebra, learning her shape. All the while, his lips moved, tracing the sensitive line of her jaw, the curve of her neck where her pulse beat strong and fast. She arched into the touch, her own hands finding the solid muscle of his shoulders, holding on, grounding herself. The respect for boundaries was palpable. Every movement was a question asked and answered in the language of touch. He tilted her chin up, and their mouths finally met. It was not a kiss of desperation, but of deep, certain warmth, a mutual acknowledgement of the impossible. Dangerous ground they now shared. Later, they lay in the dark, the city lights the only illumination. The sheets were cool and smelled of nothing at all. "Sable York offered me a deal," Maeve said, her voice clear and calm in the darkness. She felt him tense beside her, a subtle hardening of muscle, but he said nothing. He waited. "Before the warehouse raid, she offered me full immunity, a clean file. She said the BUI wanted you, and they wanted Corbin Lyle. She wanted me to give you up, trade your data, your location, for my freedom." Silas remained still for a long time. She could feel him processing the betrayal, the closeness of the knife, calculating the angles. He finally turned his head on the pillow to look at her silhouette. He did not ask why she was telling him. He did not ask what she had said. He just exhaled, a long, slow breath that let go of all the tension in his shoulders. "Thank you," he said, his voice rough with an emotion she could not name. "Thank you for choosing honesty. It is a rare currency." The quiet was broken by the sharp buzz of Silas's encrypted phone. He listened, his face hardening back into the public mask of the River King, when understood. He ended the call and sat up, swinging his legs over the side of the bed. That was Rook. Corbin Lyle is making his move. He's hosting a humanitarian gala tomorrow night at Fort St. Roche. He's trying to lock down his private investors. "Why a gala?" Maeve asked, sitting up, pulling the sheet with her. "Because," Silas said, "Rook's source inside ArcLight confirmed it. Lyle is doing a live demonstration. He's showing off the deep fake video, the one of me taking the bribe. He's presenting it as proof of his system's capabilities, a way to catch corruption on the river. He's using his own crime to sell his product." "The server," Maeve said, understanding immediately. "The actual demo server has to be there." "Deacon is already working on getting us invitations," Silas said, switching his phone to speaker. "Tamsin, tell her. The demo will be running on a closed, firewalled network." Tamsin's voice came through, high-strung but determined. "But if I can get physical access, even for 10 seconds, I can inject a code string. When he plays the deep fake, my code will piggyback on the video feed. I can insert a subtitle layer." "What kind of subtitle?" Maeve asked. "A simple one," Tamsin said. "It will flash across the screen in bright red, right over Silas's face. This is a fabrication, proof of concept." The next day, the penthouse was a hive of nervous energy. While Deacon secured the invites, Maeve stood with Silas in front of a full-length mirror. "You cannot react," Maeve instructed. "When Lyle plays that video, you have to be granite. He's looking for a reaction. His investors are looking for a reaction. You have to give them nothing." "I know how to keep a straight face," Silas said flatly. "No," Maeve countered. "You know how to look intimidating. That is not the same. Intimidation is an emotion. We need nothing. When you lie about being angry, this vein here pulses. Just once. When you are bluffing, you hold your breath for exactly 1.2 seconds before you speak. Your tell is your control. He stared at her in the reflection. She was not just observing him, she was seeing him, dissecting the armor he had worn since he was 16. "I see you, Silas," she said softly, meeting his eyes in the glass. "I see you when you are trying to hide." It was more an admission of love than the kiss had ever been. A sharp knock on the door interrupted them. Milo Penn stood there, his usual nervous energy replaced by a somber quiet. He was holding a damp, brown, paper-wrapped parcel. "This was left with the concierge," he said. "No name, just the apartment number." Silas took it. It was heavy. He tore the paper away. It was not a bomb. It was a cheap, black frame. Inside was a photograph. Maeve's breath hitched. The air left her lungs. She knew the photo. It was her. Years ago, in the desert, her face smudged with dirt and blood, she was kneeling, performing CPR on the young private, the one she had lost, the one whose face still haunted her. Tucked into the frame was a small, neatly typed note. "Everyone has someone they could not save." The room tilted. The sounds of the city faded, replaced by the memory of helicopter blades, the shouting, the suffocating, metallic smell of blood. She was back in the tent. She was failing. "Maeve?" She did not hear him. Her hands began to shake. Silas did not offer platitudes. He did not tell her it was okay. He did not give her advice. He simply stepped in, wrapped his arms around her, and held on. He became an anchor, a solid, unmoving presence, his body shielding her from the memory, his strong, steady heartbeat a tether to the penthouse, to the here and now. He just held her, silent and absolute, until her breathing slowed and the roar in her ears faded to a hum. She finally pulled back, her face pale but her eyes clear. The panic was gone, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. She looked at the photo, then at Silas. "He wants me to run," she said. "He thinks this will break me. He thinks I am still the person who ran from that hospital." She placed the photograph face down on the table. "We are not running anymore." As if on cue, the first low rumble of thunder rolled across the sky. The flat gray light in the room darkened, the air pressure dropping. Silas looked out the window. "A tropical storm," he said. "It is moving in from the Gulf. It is scheduled to make landfall tomorrow night." Right during the gala, nature itself had just become an adversary. Fort St. Roche was not a military base, but a monument to new money, a repurposed 19th century fortress now serving as the city's most exclusive event space. The walls of old brick were uplit with cool blue LEDs. Waiters in tuxedos offered champagne, and the humid, stormy air was masked by the scent of imported orchids. In the center of the main courtyard, covered by a massive glass atrium, stood Corbin Lyle. He was at a podium, dwarfed by a flawless LED screen that stretched 6 meters high. Maeve wore a simple black dress, the key to the penthouse cool against her skin. Silas was beside her in a dark, perfectly tailored suit, his face a mask of polite interest. He looked like granite. "The future is not about arrests," Corbin was saying, his voice resonating with the false sincerity of a televangelist. "It is about prevention. It is about an algorithm that sees the crime before it happens. A future without crime. A future secured by Bayou Sink." He smiled, and the massive screen lit up. It was the deep fake Silas in the dark office, accepting the briefcase of cash. The investors murmured. "This," Corbin said, gesturing to the screen, "is the old way. Corruption, backroom deals, a cancer on our river. Our system flagged this transaction, verified it, and reported it." "Now, Tamsin," Maeve whispered into her sleeve. On the screen, right as the fake Silas closed the briefcase, bright red text flickered across his face. "This is a fabrication, proof of concept." The text vanished in a second, followed by a burst of digital static. The screen stuttered. Corbin Lyle did not miss a beat. His face hardened. shifting from savior to victim. "As you can see," he said, his voice rising in manufactured outrage, "the very elements we are trying to stop are attacking us right now. This is the cyber terrorism I warned you about, an attack orchestrated by the man on that screen, Silas Caravelli." As if summoned by the name, 4 BUI agents in different uniforms from Sables pushed through the service entrance. "Silas Caravelli," their leader shouted, "producing a warrant. You are under arrest for conspiracy and financial crimes." The agents moved toward Silas, but Maeve was already moving toward the kitchen. She had seen the setup during their entrance. It was an open kitchen designed for culinary theater, complete with a high-pressure misting system for the herb garden. She grabbed the emergency fire pull station next to it. It was not for fire, it was for the mist. She pulled the lever. A massive, cold fog instantly erupted from the ceiling, blanketing the courtyard in a dense, white cloud. It was not smoke, just water, but it was disorienting. The crowd gasped. The BUI agents stopped, blinded. "What is this?" the lead agent yelled. "It is a legal delay." Deacon Hale's dry voice cut through the fog. He emerged, holding a different document, serving it to the stunned agent. "That is a civil court injunction, ordering the immediate preservation of all digital evidence on those servers. You cannot arrest him, and you cannot seize that equipment until my digital forensics expert arrives. The order grants us 40 minutes. The BUI agent looked at the paper, then at the fog, completely outmaneuvered. The mist began to settle, revealing the tableau. Corbin Lyle stood at his podium, his smile gone, replaced by a look of cold fury. Maeve walked directly toward him, the crowd parting around her. Silas stayed back, a silent, watchful shadow. "It was a good try, Corbin," Maeve said, her voice clear in the sudden quiet. "But the painting gave you away." "What are you talking about?" "The deep fake," Maeve said. "The abstract painting in the background, the one hanging 3 degrees crooked. I thought it looked familiar." She pointed past Corbin, to the main entrance of the gala. "It is a Jax Callow original, the same one hanging in your lobby right now. You were so arrogant, you filmed your fake video in your own demo room, right down the hall from a piece of art you display in public." A ripple of understanding went through the investors. The BUI agents looked at each other, their case suddenly dissolving. Corbin Lyle laughed. It was a thin, dry sound. "You are very smart, Waitress, but you are also very naive. The law does not belong to the smart. It belongs to the people who write it, who fund it." He nodded to a man in the corner, a member of the Mercers Guild. The man picked up his phone. "Mr. Hale," the man said, his voice carrying, "I'm instructing our associates at Palladium Trust to file an emergency injunction against your current fund. Consider its assets frozen indefinitely." Deacon paled. That was the kill shot. "Tamsin, now," Maeve said into her mic. "He is distracted." In the chaos, Rook Navarro had ghosted into the audio-visual booth. He had seen the manager, a man obsessed with his credentials, wearing his key card on a lanyard, a simple brush, a muttered apology about the mist, and the card was in Rook's hand. He swiped Tamsin in. Tamsin's fingers flew, the open port on the server vulnerable. She did not need to hack. She had the master key. "I am in," she whispered. "I am pulling the render logs, the metadata. Got it, it matches. It matches the workstation signature from the Bayou Sync demo room. It is proof. They rendered it themselves." The lead BUI inspector, listening to Deacon, looked at the new evidence Tamsin was forwarding to his phone. "My God," the inspector muttered, looking at Corbin. "If this is true, this is policy-level forgery. This is a setup." Corbin saw the tide turn. He saw the agents, the investors, the doubt. He went to his final option. He tapped his own earpiece, speaking to his ArcLight security detail. "The event is compromised. Escort our VIPs home. Start with the tech team." It was a clear order, but it was not for an escort. It was for a kidnapping. 2 ArcLight operatives immediately moved toward the AV booth, toward Tamsin. They were going to grab her, and the logs, and disappear. Silas saw it. He tensed. his body coiling to move, to intercept, to protect his team with the violence he had promised to leave behind. "No," Maeve grabbed his arm, her grip like steel. "If you fall, if they arrest you, everything falls. The fund, the vote, all of it. You cannot be the one to throw the punch." He looked at her, his face a mask of agony, trapped between his promise and his nature. "They want Tamsin," Maeve said, her voice fast and low. "They do not know what she looks like. They just know she is the technician. I will be the technician." "Maeve, no." "I was a combat nurse," she said, her eyes boring into his, willing him to understand. "I have more escape and evasion training than your entire team. I can handle myself. You stay here. You be the victim. You be the man they tried to frame. Let me be the one who gets away." Before he could argue, she kissed him. It was not a kiss of romance. It was a kiss of strategy, hard, fast, and final. She turned and ran for the AV booth, intercepting the ArcLight team just as they reached the door. "Thank God!" Maeve yelled, playing the panicked technician perfectly. "He is crazy. Get me out of here." The guards looked at her, then at the booth, and made their decision. She was the only one there. She was the target. "Yes, ma'am," one said, grabbing her arm. "This way." They began to drag her toward the exit, just as the first sheets of storm rain began to hammer against the glass atrium. The exchange point was a concrete island in a sea of chaos, the Interstate 10 overpass, chosen specifically because it was an evacuation bottleneck. The tropical storm was no longer approaching. It had arrived. Wind did not just blow, it screamed, a high-pitched, abrasive shriek that vibrated in the steel girders of the bridge. Rain moved in horizontal sheets, thick as curtains. ArcLight had done their job. 2 heavy-duty pickup trucks blocked both ends of the overpass, their yellow emergency strobes cutting rhythmic, sickening flashes through the dark. Maeve sat in the back of Silas's sedan, 10 yards from the blockade. "They are bringing Tamsin," Milo reported from the driver's seat, his voice tight. "Tamsin has the log files on her," Silas said from the passenger seat, his voice a low rumble. "That is the exchange, the data for Maeve." "They do not care about the data, Silas," Maeve said. "They want the technician. They think I am Tamsin. This is a snatch and grab." She looked at the massive steel support cable that disappeared into the concrete anchor. "Milo, pop the trunk, but do not get out. When I move, get Tamsin and drive. Do not wait." She slipped out of the car. The wind nearly tore the door from her hand. She moved to the trunk, pretending to brace herself against the storm. Her hand, hidden from the ArcLight guards, held a small, black radio booster. She pressed it hard into a gap between the bridge deck and the main support I-beam, clipping it to the thick steel. The entire bridge was now her antenna, broadcasting to Deacon, who was miles away. "I am here," she yelled into the wind, walking forward, her hands up. 2 ArcLight guards shoved Tamsin out of their truck. The accountant was pale, soaked, and shaking. "Maeve, do not," Tamsin cried. "It is okay, Tamsin, go," Maeve yelled. The exchange happened in the watery no-man's land. Tamsin ran, stumbling toward Silas's car. Milo grabbed her, pulling her inside. The sedan's tires spun, and it shot backward, reversing down the entrance ramp. Maeve was left alone with the guards. One grabbed her arms, spinning her around, and cinched her wrists together with a thick, plastic zip tie. They bound her hands in front, standard soft binding. "Corbin wants to see you," the guard shouted over the storm. They pushed her toward their truck. Maeve looked down at her hands. The tie was tight, biting into her skin, but they had left a millimeter of play. She focused, her combat nurse training taking over. She made a fist, isolating her left pinky finger. She braced the joint against the rigid edge of the plastic tie, then with a sudden, agonizingly precise rotation, she dislocated the joint. It was not a scream, just a sharp, internal click. A burst of white-hot pain flooded her arm, a sensation she welcomed. Her hand, now structurally narrower, had the space it needed. She began to work the tie down over the collapsed joint, hiding the movement in the chaotic wind. The wind was so loud, the guards did not hear the thud of heavy boots landing on the wet concrete behind them. Silas and Rook Navarro vaulted over the side railing, having climbed the support columns from the dark, churning canal below. The storm was their camouflage. Rook, moving like a bear, simply shoved one guard sideways into the path of a 50-mile-an-hour gust. The man went airborne, slamming into the concrete divider. Silas took the second guard, using the man's own momentum to drive him face first into the side of the truck. It was over in 3 seconds. "Maeve," Silas said, pulling a knife to cut her free. "No time," she grunted, pulling her hand free of the tie. She snapped the dislocated finger back into place with a sickening pop, not even wincing. "New players," Rook growled, pointing. A third vehicle, an armored, matte black truck, plowed through the rain, its headlights killing the strobing yellows. It stopped. Corbin Lyle stepped out, flanked not by Arclight but by 6 operatives in black raincoats, the insignia of the Mercers Guild visible on their collars. The Arclight guards were just bait. This was the real power. Corbin was not holding a weapon. He was holding a stabilized camera rig with a microphone. The light on it was red. He was live streaming. "We are live New Orleans," Corbin yelled into the mic, his face a mask of civic duty. "We are on the Interstate 10 evacuation route, where I have just intercepted a team of economic terrorists. Silas Caravelli and his associate, caught attempting to flee the city after their plot to seize control of our port was exposed." Silas lunged, but Rook held him back. "It is a feed! Boss, it is going everywhere!" Corbin pointed the camera at Silas. "This is the man who would see your city starve. This is the corruption we must cut out." Maeve saw the microphone. She saw the red light. She did not run from Corbin. She ran at him. She lunged, shoving past his shoulder, and grabbed the microphone from its housing. The camera, still stabilized, was now pointed directly at her face, the wind whipping her hair, the rain streaming down her cheeks. "He is lying," she shouted, her voice booming, amplified. "He is not saving the port. He is trying to steal it. My name is Maeve Rook. This is Corbin Lyle. He wants to lock down your port with one click, using a fraudulent algorithm. He's using this storm to cover his tracks. He wants to steal your job, your food, your river." Miles away, at the civil courthouse, a night judge watched the chaotic feed on his phone. Deacon Hale's voice was in his other ear. "Your Honor, that is the woman. That is the proof. Tamsin Quaid's logs are filed. We need an emergency injunction against Palladium Trust now, before he liquidates." "Son," the judge said, watching Maeve's desperate plea, "you have got it. Issue the TRO. Freeze his assets now." On the bridge, Corbin was stunned. He tried to grab the mic back, but Maeve had changed the narrative. The Mercers Guild moved in, weapons raised. "We are leaving!" Rook yelled. He sprinted away, not toward the car, but toward the edge of the overpass. Below them was a massive construction site, flooded but active. Rook vaulted the railing, landing on the cab of a huge yellow mobile crane. He smashed the window, hot-wired the ignition, and the crane's diesel engine roared to life. He swung the heavy steel boom, not at the men, but at the Arclight truck blocking the exit. The crane hook, weighing 1,000 pounds, smashed through the truck's engine block, shoving it aside like a toy. The path was clear. "Go!" Silas yelled, grabbing Maeve. They sprinted for the gap. A Mercer operative, faster than the others, intercepted them. He grabbed Silas, his arm wrapping around Silas's throat, a chokehold. Silas tore at the arm, but the man's grip was like steel. Maeve, unarmed, frantic, felt the front of her cheap plastic raincoat. She ripped at the collar, her fingers finding the small, sharp-pointed metal pin that held the brand tag. It was barely an inch long. The Mercer operative was focused on Silas. Maeve drove the tiny metal pin, hard, into the man's exposed wrist, striking the cluster of nerves just below the bone. The man screamed, a high, thin sound lost in the wind. His arm, his entire hand, went numb, spasming open reflexively. Silas was free. He and Maeve ran, vanishing into the storm. Corbin Lyle, his face purple with rage, screamed at his men, "Stop them! Do not let them escape! Activate the assets!" He hit a button on his phone. From the back of his armored truck, 2 quadcopter drones rose into the air, their rotors fighting the hurricane-force winds. These were not the cheap toys from the alley. They were military-grade, and they had weapons. The drones wobbled, their stabilization software pushed to its absolute limit. The wind was too strong, the air too chaotic. One drone, caught in a sudden shear, was flipped sideways. It slammed into the overpass pylon, erupting in a brief, bright flash of sparks and burning lithium. The other drone, unable to lock, was simply blown backward into the dark, lost to the storm. Corbin Lyle stood alone on the bridge, his assets frozen, his drones gone, and his face broadcast across the city as a liar. The digital war ended just as the physical one scattered. Tamsin Quaid, safe in the back of Milo's speeding sedan, her hands shaking but her mind clear, plugged her drive into a secure mobile hotspot. She bypassed the Mercer's firewalls, which were already in disarray, and uploaded the entire verified render log. She sent the metadata, the workstation ID, the timestamps, and the deep-fake source code to 3 different public data repositories. Within minutes, the local New Orleans tech blogs had it. The hashtag, simple and powerful, began to trend across the entire Gulf Coast. #Save the river. Back on the bridge, the illusion of power evaporated. Corbin Lyle, his livestream feed now dead static, watched his absolute victory collapse. The Mercer's Guild operatives, professional to the end, saw the digital assets frozen and the drones lost. Their investment was bust. They simply got back in their armored truck, their faces invisible behind dark visors, and drove away. Melting into the evacuation traffic, Corbin Lyle was left alone, just another man in an expensive suit, soaking wet on an overpass. A new set of headlights cut through the rain. The BUI sedan, Sable York, stepped out, her face hard, her suit ruined. She walked past Corbin, directly to the senior BUI inspector who had tried to arrest Silas at the gala. "I came back," she said, her voice loud enough to be heard over the wind. She held up a small, digital audio recorder. "This is from 6 months ago. Corbin Lyle, offering me a consulting fee to delay the Bureau's investigation into Bayou Sink. It is a clean bribery charge. It will stick." The inspector looked at her, then at the recorder, understanding her gamble. She was sacrificing her own career, admitting to the bribe, just to guarantee the arrest. She was choosing to do the right thing, just as Silas had predicted she might. Corbin saw it. He was a rat, and the ship was sinking. He bolted. He ran into the line of slow-moving evacuation traffic, yanking on the door handle of a pickup truck, trying to get away. Silas emerged from the shadow of a concrete pylon. He had not run far. He pursued Corbin, not with a gun, but with the relentless pace of the river itself. He moved through the stalled cars, a shadow of pure focus. He caught Corbin between a stalled bus and a concrete divider. Corbin spun, his face a mask of terror, and swung a wild, clumsy fist. Silas moved inside the punch, deflecting the arm with an open palm. He did not strike back. He used a simple, non-violent wrist lock, turning Corbin's own momentum against him, twisting the arm until Corbin was forced to his knees. It was a move of pure control, not brutality. He pushed him flat onto the wet pavement and stepped back, just as the local news crews, following the social media storm, arrived. Their cameras captured the entire, perfect image live Corbin Lyle, the city's supposed savior, being cuffed by the BUI, and Silas Caravelli, the supposed terrorist, standing beside them, his hands empty, clean and in plain sight. The storm passed at dawn. It left the city scoured, quiet and smelling of pine and wet earth. The sky was a pale, bruised purple, the first rays of sun striking the river. Maeve and Silas stood on the flat roof of the Bywater warehouse. The air cool and damp, they were still soaked, their clothes from the gala ruined. They looked out at the Mississippi, which was swollen and brown, but holding its course. They were safe. They were breathing. A sound bubbled up in Maeve's chest. It was a short, sharp bark of pure, exhausted relief. Silas heard it, and a matching, rusty laugh escaped his own. They stood on the roof, two survivors of a different kind of war, and laughed at the sheer, impossible weight that had finally been lifted. Maeve's laughter faded. She looked at the water. "I did not save everyone," she said, her voice quiet. She was thinking of the photo, of the private, of the old, deep wound. "I could not save them all." Silas turned to her. He took her cold hands in his. "But we saved a lot of people today," he said, his voice raw with conviction. "We saved their jobs. We saved this port." He squeezed her hands, his gaze locking with hers, making a new vow in the wet dawn. "From now on, that is the new rule. We only save, no more harm." She looked up at him, the man who had slept under bridges, the man who had learned to be a monster, and the man who was now, with every action, choosing to be something else. He leaned in and kissed her. It was gentle, slow, and stubborn. It was not the desperate kiss of the steamboat or the hurried kiss of the gala. It was not a kiss of hiding. It was a promise to live, right here, in the pale, new light. The epilogue wrote itself quickly. The Wharf Union vote, held 2 days after the storm, was unanimous. The current fund, its assets unfrozen by the court, launched to overwhelming success. It financed 36 independent river captains in its first month alone. The Sabine House was rebuilt. By day, it became a community center, funded by Silas, offering free breakfast. By night, it was still the best restaurant in the quarter, the new vocational training program for ex-convicts, teaching them everything from culinary skills to data management, was run by Maeve Rook. Sable York received a formal disciplinary reprimand from the Bureau of Urban Integrity and a 6-month suspension for her actions. She spent her weekends volunteering in the Sabine House kitchen, scrubbing pots, beginning the long, quiet journey of redemption. Weeks later, Maeve stood on the sidewalk in the late afternoon sun, watching a painter hang a new, freshly painted sign reopening this Friday. Silas came up behind her, sliding his arms around her waist, pulling her back against his chest. She leaned into him, feeling his steady, familiar heartbeat. She looked at the clean glass, the new paint, the promise of a fresh start. She tilted her head, a small, confident smile playing on her lips. She gave Silas a knowing wink. "If anyone ever picks the wrong night again," she said, "we will just have to teach them a different lesson." The screen goes dark. Thank you so much for listening to this story. We would love to know where you are tuning in from. Please drop a comment below and let us know where in the world you are, and share your thoughts on the story. Do not forget to subscribe to the channel, Mafia Boss Stories, and like this video. If you enjoyed this, please support us by hitting that hype button so this story can be heard by even more people.